Okay.
2015.
April 22nd. Okay. And the date of, or the place of the interview is at my uncle's house out on Cotton Mill.
Well, Kearney, Buffalo County,
Yes.
Nebraska.
Okay. What is your birth date?
My birth date is 1 August 1938.
Thank you. And the names of the people attending the interview, which is just Riley Hogg and Gary Hogg. The organization you're working with, not any. What is your branch of service?
My branch of service is the United States Marine Corps.
Okay. And what was your rank?
When I was released from active duty, I was E4. I was discharged from my final service requirement 3 years after I was released as an E4. At the time I was released, I was a buck sergeant or three striper. After being released, the Marine Corps reinstituted the rank of Lance Corporal. So when I was actually discharged, my DD 214 shows my rank as Corporal E4.
Thank you. Where did you serve at?
Basically California. When I enlisted, I went to boot camp at San Diego, and from after boot camp I went to Camp Pendleton for combat training, and then I was stationed at the Marine Corps Air Facility, or Air Station I should say, in Santa Ana, California, which was basically an attachment to El Toro.
What type of work did you perform?
The type of work that I did in the Marine Corps, everybody's considered a rifleman. Then we have a secondary MOS, or military occupational specialty, and I was basically a clerk typist in a helicopter outfit.
So we answered where you served. Did you serve during any wars?
No, I was in the service from 1956 to 1959. The Korean War ended in 53, and Vietnam didn't really get started until the mid-60s, I guess, mid to late 60s. So I was just during peacetime.
Okay.
Let me back up. Where I served, I also served temporary duty in Nevada, what is now called Area 13, watching atomic bombs in 1957, and on the USS Boxer in the Pacific in a Weehawken Bikini in 1958, again watching atomic bomb tests.
Okay. Were you drafted or did you enlist?
No, I enlisted at age 17, and I was released before I turned 21, roughly 3 years later.
And you said that you had to have your parents' consent, right?
That's correct. I had to have my parents' consent at age 17 to get in.
Where were you living at this time?
I was at home living rural Ravenna, Nebraska, with my parents, obviously.
On the family farm?
Yes, that's correct.
Why did you join?
At the time, everybody who was physically fit, men at least, were going to be drafted. And if you wish to choose your service, you needed to enlist in the service of your choice. Otherwise, you would just generally be, for the most part, assigned to the Army, because on a draft at the time it was 2 years, and the Air Force and the Navy, if you're over 18, had to enlist for 4 years, but in the Marine Corps you could also enlist for 3 years or 4 years or longer if you so wished.
So I guess that kind of answers the next question of why did you pick the service branch you joined, but is there any other reasons?
I had uncles serving in World War II, a couple of them in Europe and one in the Pacific in the Marine Corps. The other two were in the Army. And I at that time wanted to go to Japan and or Australia, and I figured if I served with the Marine Corps because they were still in the Pacific, I might get there. Unfortunately, I didn't get there during the service.
Okay. Do you recall your first days in service?
I wouldn't forget it. The first day was rather a shock. We arrived in San Diego approximately 10 at night. On the train, they lined us up, and all of a sudden, we weren't just being mollycoddled, shall I say, as recruits. We had already been sworn in, so we were subjected to being nothing but recruits to be in boot camp. And we got all of our issue, general issue. That's why they call the military people GIs, because everything that comes, that your clothing, toiletries, etc., is all called general issue. So the first morning we didn't get to bed until maybe 1 that night. Had to make our own beds in order to get into them. We got up at 5 o'clock and went to breakfast. That was another shock. Everything was heavy compared to home cooking, and it took a while to get used to the food. But a lot of discipline, a lot of exercising. We didn't do anything on a walk. We ran every place, and push-ups, all those calisthenic things, as well as learning whatever we needed to learn about the Marine Corps.
So that's why you're still so fit, right?
No, I'm fat.
No. What did it feel like?
Basically, I guess the best way I can describe it is that all of the services, when they get their recruits in, are going to break them down, and then they're going to build them back out, up in the way that they want them to be in that particular branch of the service. And so that's basically what we did for 12 weeks in boot camp. They broke us down, and then they built us back up.
That sounds like fun. Tell me about your boot camper training experiences.
Well, as I just mentioned, they first beat you down to nothing, and then they start teaching you about discipline and taking care of one another, basically all of the calisthenics, running a lot, doing push-ups, set-ups, chin-ups, learning how to use pogo sticks, I guess is what they called them back then. I don't know what they call them now, so that you could learn how to...
Things you hop on?
No. It was it was a bar with two padded things on the end, so you knock each other around. Essentially, it was pre-training for learning how to use the bayonet on the end of the rifle if you had to get into hand-in-hand combat.
Okay. Do you remember your instructors?
Very well. Remember two of their names. One's Tanaya, the other Holder. I don't remember the third guy's name, but they were the ones that had to beat us down and then bring us back up.
And put up with you at first, right?
Or we them, yeah.
How did you get through it?
Well, being raised on the farm, I wasn't worried about hard work. So it was, I didn't like it, but we got through it, I guess. There were some things that we did. When we had to do our own clothing, so we washed them with scrub brushes on a scrub board. We had to go through tear gas training, where you went into a room, had a gas mask on, then you had to take your gas mask off and sing the Marine Corps hymn. If you didn't do it loud enough, you sang it the second time, and I don't think anybody ever did it loud enough the first time. We got out of there with stinging lungs, stinging eyes, stinging skin, but we made it through. So if you didn't get your clothes clean, you redid your clothes. If you didn't make your bed tight enough, then they had to tear it apart. We did that sometimes half a day at a time.
You had to flip a coin on it?
Pardon?
the flipping neck
Oh
liner.
yeah, yeah. When you didn't have it tight enough, they'd use a 50-cent piece, which we had in common then. And if it didn't bounce off of one bunk, everybody's bunk got tore apart, and then we started all over again.
Yeah. Which wars did you serve?
Again, I was between the Korean and Vietnam Wars, so I was in peacetime. Although in 1957 the Hungarian Revolution started, we did think we were going to go to that, but since the president decided not to send troops, we didn't get over to Hungary at that time.
Okay. So where exactly did you go?
Again, essentially from San Diego to Camp Pendleton, which is just up the coast from San Diego, and then to Santa Ana, where my permanent station was, and then to an area not too far out of Las Vegas, area 13 now, I think it's what it's called, but that's where the atomic bombs were tested at the time. And then to the following year, that was in 57, 58, to Eniwetok Bikini on the USS Boxer, a World War II aircraft carrier. With respect to the atomic bombs, at one time when I was in the trench, they had big trenches dug that we got into and waited for the bombs to go off. We were in there pre-dawn, and generally around dawn they would set the bombs off at one time, and the light must have just been just right, because I could see the radius and the ulna of my forearm like I guess a color x-ray, and the red flesh around it. That was the only time I saw that, although I was in the trenches different times. At one time there was a cooked lizard right above me when I lifted up out of the trench after the bomb had gone off. And then on a third explosion, non-explosion I should say, we were in the trench. They were supposed to set the bomb off, and it didn't go off. And so we were there until roughly noon when they hauled us off, and I was a little worried about that after seeing the cooked lizard, because we would have all been cooked ourselves. And I never did learn at that time why the bomb didn't go off until I was in Australia, probably the early 1990s, and met a couple of gentlemen, one about my age who was with the AEC, Atomic Energy Commission, in Nevada, not Nevada, excuse me, in New Mexico, and another one in California at, now I always slip my name or my mind here. Anyway, he was an older gentleman. They were talking about work, and I was listening and told the older guy that I was in the trench when the bomb didn't go off, asked if he was with the AEC at the time. He said yes. And then I asked him the whys and the wherefores, and he said, first I have to say that the bombs were made, or built I should say, on a high tower, and on that particular morning when the last scientist came down from wiring the bomb to an electrical charge, he was supposed to take the live wires from the elevator and rewire them into the bomb down below, so that when they pull the trigger it'd go off, and the guy forgot to do it, so the bomb didn't go off. So I didn't have anything to worry about, but nobody knew that at the time.
Yeah. Do you remember arriving, and what was it like at all these places?
We arrived in Nevada via helicopters, because I was in a helicopter outfit, and at that time they were doing what they called vertical envelopment, which was trying to figure out whether it was going to be viable to lift combat troops into combat with helicopters as opposed to trucks, etc., over land. so that they could get around a lot of rivers, mountains, etc., etc. So that's how we got to and from Nevada. When we went to